All right, let's face it. Workplace conflict, it's something we all deal with at some point, right?
Well, absolutely. It's pretty much inevitable.
Exactly. So today we're diving deep into this guide, Navigating Workplace Conflict. It's packed with advice on, well, just that, navigating those choppy waters.
And it's not just about surviving those disagreements, right?
Nope, we're aiming higher. We want to thrive because of those conflicts.
So that's an interesting perspective.
So we'll unpack why different generations, they handle conflict in totally different ways. Oh, and the hidden cost of just letting disagreements fester. Like what happens when we just sweep things under the rug?
Never a good idea.
Definitely not. Plus, we'll explore this wild idea. Can conflict actually be a good thing?
Well, you got to stay tuned to find out.
This guide, it doesn't mess around, does it?
Uh,
Jumps right into the nitty-gritty, the common causes of, all that office drama.
right to the heart of it. And I think just being aware of these common causes can be huge, like preventing conflicts from even starting.
Okay, so let's unpack those conflict triggers. What are some of the big ones?
Well, you've got communication breakdowns. That's a classic.
Makes sense, right? Miscommunication, it's like a breeding ground for conflict.
Oh, I think it goes deeper than that. The guide, it specifically points to unclear expectations as a major conflict starter.
Oh, I see what you mean. So, like, if you and a teammate have totally different ideas about what success even means on a project.
You're almost guaranteed to bump heads. It's like if you were setting off on a road trip without agreeing on the destination.
Total recipe for disaster. And then, of course, you've got those classic personality clashes.
Oh, absolutely. But even beyond just personality differences, the guide digs into how differing values can lead to friction.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially now when people bring their whole selves to work,
Yeah.
values and all.
Exactly. So imagine you've got a team where one person, they prioritize speed above everything else, while another, they're all about quality. Quality trumps all else.
Yeah, that's going to cause some tension for sure, like oil and water trying to mix.
Right. And you know what else I found really interesting in the guide?
What's that?
The section on generational differences and approaching conflict.
Oh, yeah, that was fascinating. Do you, like, actually see those patterns play out in your own work?
All the time.
Yeah.
And it's not about, stereotyping anyone, but understanding that different generations, they just have different communication styles, right?
Yeah.
And that impacts how they deal with conflict.
So, for example, what did the guide say about, like, baby boomers?
Well, it mentioned that baby boomers, they often prefer, that direct face-to-face conversation to hash things out, even if it gets a little heated.
Ah, the good old-fashioned close the door, let's talk it out approach.
Exactly. Straight to the point, no beating around the bush.
And then you got Gen X. What about them?
Gen X, they might be more comfortable with a direct email, maybe a memo. Gets right to the heart of the matter. But then millennials, they might suggest a brainstorming session, a collaborative approach, maybe even using some online tools to gather everyone's input.
Interesting.
And then, of course, you've got Gen Z. They're, typically very vocal about wanting open dialogue, making sure that everyone feels heard and respected.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to see how these different approaches can lead to misunderstandings, in real-world situations.
Yeah.
Like a boomer might read a Gen X's email and find it cold or impersonal.
Oh, totally.
Or, a Gen Zer might feel shut down if a millennial just tries to, like, jump into problem-solving mode without really acknowledging their feelings first.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. And, all of this brings us to the dangers of not addressing conflict. What happens when we don't deal with those disagreements effectively?
The guy didn't hold back, did it, on those consequences?
Nope, it's pretty blunt. It even cites a study showing that unresolved conflict can tank team productivity by like 25%.
Whoa, 25%.
Imagine that. A quarter of your team's potential just wasted on simmering resentment. It's like a slow leak in your productivity tire.
At first, you might not even notice it, but eventually it's going to lead to a major breakdown.
Exactly. And don't forget the human cost. The guide talks about all the stress, the anxiety, even burnout that can come from a workplace where conflict just festers.
People start dreading coming to work. They disengage.
And you see it reflected in higher turnover, people just leaving.
Yeah, it creates this toxic atmosphere that just permeates everything. So what's the antidote? Like, what does the guide recommend we actually do about all this?
Well, one of the most powerful things they talk about is conflict resolution training.
Okay, interesting.
Think of it like giving everyone on your team a toolkit, for navigating those disagreements effectively. It's not just about getting along, it's about equipping people with those communication and problem-solving skills to turn conflict into, well, a positive force.
So it's not just about putting out fires. It's about, like, building a culture where conflict can actually be productive.
You got it. The guide even gets into specific techniques, like active listening,
Yeah.
where you're truly hearing and trying to understand the other person's perspective.
Yeah, instead of just waiting for your turn to talk.
Right. And it also talks about the importance of focusing on interests, not positions. So instead of digging your heels in about a specific solution, you try to explore those underlying needs and motivations that are driving the conflict in the first place.
So it's about shifting the conversation from me versus you
So
to,
how can we find a solution that works for both of
that's
us?
so powerful.
And it leads to, a more collaborative, creative approach to problem solving.
Doesn't it feel empowering? Like,
Yeah,
instead of being stuck in that cycle of disagreeing, you actually have the skills to, like, transform those conflicts into opportunities to grow.
absolutely. And, stepping back a bit, when a workplace embraces conflict resolution, you see more respect, more innovation, even psychological safety.
So it's clear conflict is going to happen. That's life, right? But it doesn't have to be destructive.
Not at all.
By understanding what causes conflict and equipping ourselves with the right tools, we can turn those disagreements into opportunities for growth.
Yeah. You've explored the what and the why of workplace conflict, but now I want you to think about the how.
Ooh, good point.
How are you going to apply these insights to create a more positive, productive work environment? What steps can you take to encourage that open communication and really build those conflict resolution muscles?
It's a journey, isn't it?
It is.
But hey, with the insights from this deep dive, I think our listeners are well on their way to becoming, like, conflict resolution masters.
I agree. Until next time.
Yeah.